Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to this, our first ever virtual Music at Ardingly. And it's my great pleasure, as you will no doubt see on the screen, to welcome to this first event of this nature, Harry the piano, the wonderful musician. This man described as the best damn pianist in the civilized world by Jonathan Ross, amongst other people. Harry, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm very well, Richard. Very excited and pleased to be part of this. Your debut in the live streaming. Good evening, everybody, all over the world. I believe we've got a global audience this evening. So, hi everyone. Great to have you with us.
So, as Harry alludes to there, we welcome you to this virtual event, and Harry will explain a bit about what he does in due course, of course. But he is a pianist of extraordinary capabilities, and very quickly, actually, I was reminded that it was a certain pupil, Grace, in the lower sixth. It's her birthday today, so maybe Harry could very
Ah,
quickly just show you and give you a glimpse of what he does best.
of course, of course. For Grace, did you say?
Grace in the lower six.
Happy birthday, Grace.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Harry. So you've got a little insight there into what he does, but I'm just going to ask. I'm just going to start by asking Harry what his job entails and what he gets up to in a non-COVID year, of course.
Yes, that's the essential point, isn't it? In a non-COVID year, I would be spending rather than spending sort of 11 months and 30 days of the year in my front room broadcasting to various different with lessons and masterclasses and sometimes concerts and things. I would be traveling the globe. I would be doing probably about 3 or 4 months out of the UK, and I would be improvising on audience requests in lots of different scenarios, like festivals and concerts, radio shows, TV shows, running bands on certain shows, things like that. So that's really just sort of mostly improvised shows is what my life would entail in many different countries, Richard. So very different year for me and everybody.
And for all of the fans watching, can you give us an insight to some of the places you've been to, some of the people you've performed to and for?
Wow. Well, I spent a long time on a TV show on Channel 4 20 or 25 years ago called The Big Breakfast. And that was entailed playing with lots of celebrities who happened to be on the show at the time. So I ended up playing with people like David Bowie and Elvis Costello and Will Smith and lots of big superstars. In terms of the biggest names, I have played for the Queen and Prince Charles, the private audience for the Queen up in Sandringham in 2019. It was very exciting. I'm currently the musical director for Alexander Armstrong, who you might know as the host of the show Pointless on TV. He's also a singer, and he and I and the bands usually do a tour every year or go around do various shows. So yeah, the list is long. It's I've been sort of quite blessed and fortunate to accompany those kind of people in my career, but quite a few opera singers as well because I do a bit of straight classical as well as all the jazz and improvisation. So a mixed bag, I think it's fair to say.
Fantastic. There we are, in a nutshell, the beauty and the variety in one's musical profession. Anyway, we've had a wonderful week this week with Harry doing some masterclasses and some workshops with an array of different year groups at school. But we'll talk a bit about that later on. We've had enough from me, so I'm going to hand over to you, Harry, just to introduce your first set and what you're going to do.
Okay, thanks very much, Richard. Well, I always like to start off these little shows by doing really, just by doing something that I can't introduce, because I just like to sit down and play whatever's going on in my head at the moment. Quite a few different things. What goes through the head of an itinerant improvising musician during a time of lockdown? All sorts of different songs, but it varies from day to day. Obviously, some days, like all of us, some days are a bit gloomier when it's pouring with rain outside, and it's you can't even sort of go out and exercise. And other times you get a little burst of optimism when some work comes in the future, so you have some cheerier sides. But we'll see what kind of mood I might be in. I shall just sit down and play whatever comes into my head for the first 5 minutes or so in a few different styles. So hopefully you'll get the hang of what I'm all about, and hopefully we'll have some interesting requests to challenge me later on when we come to that section of the show. But anyway, for now, here is whatever's in my head, and just do me a favor, just pray God that something occurs to me. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Absolutely wonderful.
Absolutely
I just get
nutcase.
I just get horrifically jealous. I was thinking, what improvisation do I do? And it's playing the school into chapel once a week, over a long note in my left foot. But anyway, um, just one thing I forgot to mention at the start, everyone, which is, of course, that this is a live broadcast. So I'm sat in my book room. Those of you that know Gerald the cat might see him behind me, and Harry is of course in London. So this is coming to your TVs, to your surfaces, to your computers, to your mobile phones, maybe, I don't know, live in the moment. So following that extravaganza, you probably heard all kinds of things, maybe little hints to America. Maybe that's something for later. Anyway,
Yes.
just to give Harry a chance to refresh himself and after that physical exertion. I'm really interested to know, Harry, how this started for you. How did this journey of musical improvisation start?
Yeah, I'm asked that a lot, Richard. It's basically I had quite a strict, austere upbringing because my dad was a vicar, and had very sort of set ways of deciding how children should be brought up. And one of those included the fact that he didn't believe in television for children, so which seems almost like inconceivable now, doesn't it? But like we didn't have a TV. I didn't see we didn't have a TV set in our house till I was 12 or 13 years old, which makes me sound like I was born in like 1832 or something. But but so there was lot, and there were no Xboxes. I really am sort of starting to tug at people's heartstrings now, aren't I? But there weren't, there was very little to do to entertain us as kids in those days. So I spent my whole time playing football and cricket in the street. And when I was in the house, somebody kindly donated an upright piano to us. So that was the only other sort of big toy in the house that I was allowed to play with. And I started picking out tunes on the piano with one finger and realized I could seem to have a natural understanding of how to do that and sort of try and play chords. So I had no idea what I was doing, but that was, I think, the start of it. And basically, that's out of those simple beginnings has grown the fact I've just always loved to sort of play music in different styles and make it up. And I've had good ears and been confident enough to sort of have a go at things, which is half the battle with improvisation, just overcoming the fear and throwing yourself in at the deep end. So that's the tale, Richard.
And in terms of your kind of, late teens and your early 20s, what kind of experiences did you, when you look back on your career, did you have that were those kind of guiding steps towards obviously what you do now?
I think one of the sort of major inspirations was like when we finally did sort of get a TV, and I started to think people like Oscar Peterson playing, and then was able to sort of go out and sort of, find records and stuff of other jazz piano players, which was just a revelation to me. I'd never heard anybody improvising like that before. And the people, I have to say, the people who are at schools like Ardingly, they wouldn't realize how lucky they are, because if I was in a practice room and I was starting to play some blues or some rock and roll or a little bit of jazz, after about 10 seconds it'd be this sort of knock on the door. Harris, do some proper practicing. That was, that was like, it was completely frowned on and not allowed if you weren't doing your scales and arpeggios. So I had those, that was basically discouraged by teachers and doing anything like that. But I sort of had this sort of thing of listening to other people. And then after my degree, which was a classical degree, I actually spent the entire 3 years running a jazz band. So basically learning on my feet and like sort of getting to grips with these big band charts by Glenn Miller and Count Basie and people like that. So that was the kind of beginning and formation. I've had a few months at the Leeds Jazz College. I had a wonderful piano tutor called Bill Kinghorn, who showed me some of the chords that I'd just not been able to work out myself. And that was a little stepping stone. And then I was off into professional career. I got a gig quite early on in Paris for a couple of years and was just listening to French jazz musicians and trying to learn everything I could by listening to as many different people as I could.
Fantastic. And he talks about jazz there, and that brings us on quite nicely to our first set of requests. Some people say, oh, well, Harry could, he could have thought about that earlier, that first improvisation, and off he goes. Well, we're putting the test here because, as you'll see, he needs to get pen and paper, and we have our
Yes,
first
that's what I'm
set
doing.
of requests. Which so what I'm going to do now, just while Harry gets the relevant sheets of paper, is that we
And puts his
we
bins
have
on.
a number of requests from pupils in our prep school. So I asked a number of pupils across different year groups to try and come up with two things: a piece or a style of music or a composer, and then a suitable style for Harry to play it in. So here are our eclectic list, which he needs to jot down, which was Alan in year 4 would like rondo alla turca in a general jazz style. So rondo alla turca in a general jazz style. Then we've got
Okay.
Harrison in year 8 with the Pirates of the Caribbean theme in the style of Rick Astley. So we're hoping to have Rick Astley doing his take on Hans Zimmer Pirates of the Caribbean. An amazing suggestion from Joe Johnson here: Bohemian Rhapsody in a blues style. Bohemian Rhapsody in a blues style. Then
Oh,
Ed
that's
in
hard.
year 6, the Entertainer in swing. So swing jazz, the Entertainer. So moving ragtime into swing, not the easiest thing.
Okay.
Then we've got
No.
Otto in year 6. Otto in year 6, a Bach minuet, or maybe from Anna Magdalena, I don't know, in klezmer or Jewish style, if that's possible. Then we've got Darcy, the Beethoven Fifth Symphony, not the whole thing, of course, but the famous bit,
How
in
many of these
reggae.
are there?
I know, I've only got two more. Beethoven 5 in reggae. Then we've got Ode to Joy. So maybe you can
More
slip
Beethoven.
Ode to Joy in the same bit with the reggae.
Yep.
Michaela
Yep.
would like Star Wars in the style of Mozart, which is something I think you quite
Sorry,
like
was
doing.
Ode to Joy also
And
in
then,
reggae, was it?
yes, please,
Or
if
was
that's
that
possible.
okay, okay. Also reggae. Okay, and then what was the
And
Star Wars
and
one?
then Michaela would like Star Wars in Mozart,
Thanks, Michaela.
and the final one, Hedwig's theme from Harry Potter in rock and roll. So maybe
Right.
you'd like
Let
to
me just
read the
say,
list out, Harry.
I was going to say, yes, there's a lot of stuff to remember and listen out for. It's quite a long request set. Okay, so we've got Alla Turca, the Mozart Rondo Alla Turca in a jazz style, Pirates of the Caribbean in the style of Rick Astley. That'd be interesting. Bohemian Rhapsody in a blues style, The Entertainer, Scott Joplin Rag in a swing style, the Bach Minuet in klezmer style, Beethoven LVB, Ludwig van Beethoven 5 in a reggae style, and Ode to Joy also in reggae. Star Wars, as Mozart might have played it, and Harry Potter's Hedwig's theme in rock and roll style. Right. So
That sounds
wow,
correct.
quite a lot to be getting on with. All right. Well, I'll have a go. I will do my best, Richard, and you can be the judge. All good?
Sounds wonderful. Absolute genius. How you have there's so much music happening in that immense mind of yours. It's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
immense mind. Thank you. I thought you were going to say immense stomach for a minute after a year of lockdown, lack of exercise.
Well, we're all in that capacity, aren't we? Maybe we'll talk about that a bit later, actually. Not that specifically. There is a link. So, of course, Harry, one of the other major enjoyments in your life, I understand, is the educational side of the work that you do. And
Yes.
we've had a great series of sessions with you this week that showcases that. So, what's the background there into the educational side of things that you do, and why is it important to you?
I think I touched on it, some of my motivation earlier when I was talking to you about, back in my day when if I was unless you were practicing in a very regimented way, like there was one route up the mountain to pianistic success was like you do your scales, you do your arpeggios, and of course in many ways, that learning technique and learning those things is a good thing, but there is more to music than playing scales and arpeggios and learning all these old words for the various medieval modes and everything else and all the terminology that goes with it. I think that leads to a great drop off of students around the sort of 12, 13, 14 age, which is such a shame. I think it's important. You don't have to dumb music tuition down, but if you alongside that kind of standard traditional route, if you also start explaining how to improvise and all these other sort of things, what's going on in pop music, and show the links between pop and jazz and blues and Scriabin and Bach and Mozart and Tchaikovsky and Debussy, and show that all of this music is interlinked and all the principles are the same. It's brilliant in so many ways because it engages students more, especially young students, if they play something they actually enjoy listening to alongside the stuff that they find more difficult. And also it's just a much better way, that kind of oral way of kind of learning music by listening to it and learning shapes, and kind of the instinctive side of music is really missed out. And nobody improvises cadenzas anymore. No classical musicians improvise anymore. And I'm really passionate about the fact, if you give kids, these tools, quite often they'll fly in ways that really surprise themselves more than anything. There's lots of inherent unlocked potential out there, and my life's ambition would be to get some sort of improvisation on the curriculum, because I think it massively enhances students, musicality generally, and it helps with the whole. And it doesn't have to compete with the old way. It can sit very happily alongside and just enrich it rather than competing with it. So that's sorry, I just went off on a rant there, didn't I? But I feel very strongly about it.
Clearly it's something that's very passionate, something you're very passionate about. And that was evident when we had the workshops this week. I just, from a personal perspective, thought you tailored them brilliantly to the different ages of the children that, we had.
Oh, good, thank you.
And that in itself is a skill, as we know, you've got to inspire and motivate at different levels, if you will. And
Yes.
clearly that's something that you're experienced in, which is wonderful. Have you written any kind of books or any literature or anything like that?
I haven't written any literature. No, I did. I've done a few. I've had a few pieces published for Yamaha back in the day, of like sort of, but they're slightly more advanced than probably I would present in workshops like this. But I'm
Sure.
actually in the process of writing out all of my kind of whole philosophy, and kind of like trying to get it down on paper, and with a bid with one of the guys at the Music Teachers Association, to actually try and get it on some elements of this onto the curriculum. So it is a work in progress. So watch this space. Yeah.
Fantastic, and we'll buy a copy of that and implement it straight away. No doubt. There we are.
I've just made my
So
first sale.
Harry,
Where's my agent?
there we are. Guaranteed. So let's go back into your world and the improvisation that you're doing for this kind of
Yep.
second set. Do you want to give
Okay.
us a little spiel about what you're going to play for us now?
Yes, no, not so much improvisation, but this is the kind of thing that grows out of my improvising ideas. All my good ideas come from audience requests usually. And one of my earlier career, one of the composers I was sort of well known for being able to play tunes in the style was to do things in the style of Mozart. And this led to kind of all sorts of appearances on radio on various shows, essentially playing silly tunes in sort of low art and high art, playing silly tunes in kind of composer styles, things like that, which people found appealing. And there's a show which has been running for many, many decades on BBC Radio 2. It's kind of a flagship show for Radio 2, has its own orchestra and travels up and down the country. And I've been guest on this show getting up from about 20 times now. And it's a brilliant show. It's something I really enjoy doing. And the lady that runs it is a lovely lady called Bridget Apps. And she's brilliant. She kind of takes care of everything, sorts the orchestra out, sorts out all the music, books the conductor, books the venues. And, it's a massive job to run this show because it entails a lot of people. And she also sort of books all the guest artists. And she rang me up a few years ago and said, they've given me this theme for the show this week. I'm not too sure what to do with it. It's murder, mystery, and suspense. I said, oh, yeah. She said, could you come on and do one of your nice things in the style of Mozart? And I said, yeah, of course, Bridget, with pleasure. But what's that got to do with murder, mystery, and suspense? And she said, well, I thought of that. She said, I think if you could play a detective theme, but do it, that would be the mystery. But if you could do it in the style of Mozart, that would kind of like marry the two things together. It'd be quite fun. So my head's sort of whirring already, thinking, detective theme. There's so many, aren't there? But for me, there's kind of one that stands out. There's like, when you say detective, that whole genre, there's kind of one name that generally jumps to the front of your head if you're anything like me. And I'm sure that 99% of you out there are thinking the same name now that I was when I was having this conversation. Scooby-Doo. So I wrote a Mozart sonata based on the theme tune to Scooby-Doo. I'm sure that, do you know the theme tune to Scooby-Doo, Richard? Are you familiar with that? Give me a nod if you...
Yes.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? Yeah, yes. For those of you that may not have ever come across, it's a very simple tune. So kind of well-known, simple little tune. So this is what the greatest, arguably one of the greatest musical geniuses of all time, the great Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, what he might have done if he'd been presented with such sublime source material as Hanna-Barbera's immortal theme tune to Scooby-Doo. And for those of you that like your sort of 18th century Mozart piano music, this is called Mozart Sonata K91. Get it?
The great man would have been extremely proud, no doubt, of that performance, Harry. I have no doubt.
Do you think he would have liked it?
He enjoyed a laugh and a joke, didn't he? Like the next best man, didn't
I
he,
think so.
Wolfgang Amadeus?
I think so.
Anyway, um,
Yes.
fantastic stuff, Harry. Brilliant.
Thank you.
So moving outside the world of music, it became apparent, didn't it, actually, the first time you came to Ardingly that we shared a mutual interest, as we
Yes,
as we
indeed.
went for a curry after the concert. my keys slipped out of my pocket, and I had a key ring, a cricket ball key ring, and Harry, the piano, had exactly the same one. So I'm interested to find out, Harry, the other interest in your life, and we talked a bit about lockdown and the gut and what have you, and what your kind of sporting interests are as well.
Yeah, well, I think it all came from my dad. Sort of gave me the love of three things: of classical music, of cricket, and of cryptic crosswords. That was his kind of legacy to me. Those are the three things that sort of filled his life. Apart from writing sermons, that was. So I mean, yeah, right from a very early age, it was like sort of remember something like being fascinated, dragging to cricket matches and playing in the street. And I mean, there's when you grow up and you don't have any television, you don't have all this kind of Victorian childhood, you do tend to find yourself out playing on the street more. And I think that's without wanting to go off on some great cod philosophical lecture. I think like there is something it's a little sad that you don't see kids so much playing in the street now, and that kind of the legacy of like sport being in every school and sort of functional part of it. I mean, it's just such a great thing, and it's given me such a great circle of mates. Kind of I played groups of
Yeah.
with two groups of people, one for cricket and one for football, and they've just become. I've played sort of sport with these guys, grown up with them for 30 years, and they've become best friends, and it's a really close knit group. So as well as the kind of the physical and the well being and everything, it's just great. And we sort of meet once a week and do the Zoom thing like the rest of the country. But yeah. So I'm passionate about the sort of the other legacy of sport, which is sort of friendships and growing together and competing against something is an important thing to let off steam, especially when we've all got so much pent up frustration at the moment as everyone's experiencing this year. So that was sort of a bit of a lengthy answer, wasn't it? Yeah, but I am absolutely obsessed with cricket. So yes, I'm so
And
that's not
football,
much more I
football
can
is
say
that,
than
and
that.
who's your team for football?
Well, I grew up in Shepherd's Bush, so I was saddled with Queen's Park Rangers, which was brilliant in the 70s when we were up the top of Division One, and that was when the Division One was a Premiership, and almost
Sure.
beating Liverpool and winning the title. But yeah, we've kind of fallen away a bit since then. But you stay with your team, don't you? There's nothing you can do. I still love my Super
You
Hoops
do.
QPR.
I I won't say who I support, but it becomes apparent maybe in this next round. So it's fairly topical. We've got the virtual Steepo next week. There's a shout out to all of you watching. Get to Miss Brown's email. Get on that Strava app. Make sure you get those kilometers in for whichever house or group you're involved with. There we are. Plug for the sports department. But I also was in touch with Mr. Millard, our head of sport, about the next round of requests, which, as you know, many of you know, sport and particularly cricket, it's arguably my first love in the summer term, but I don't tell my employers that. Um, but I spoke to Mr. Millard, and we have come up with a series of requests, Harry, along a sporting
Okay.
theme. Not quite as
Okay.
many, not quite as many as we had before, but
Thank
there is
goodness.
some there are some slight mavericks in here. So here we go. Um,
Okay.
First of
Yep.
all, the director of sport would like, who was on Man U's books, he would like "Glory, Glory, Man United" in a reggae style. So that's from Mr. Millard.
Well, a QPR
"Glory,
fan has got to
Glory,
play
Man
Glory, Glory, Man United. That's very dodgy, Richard.
Then we've got Karen Pickering, who's our wonderful head of swimming, former Olympian, of course, who was recently on The
Wow.
Question of Sport. And she
Oh,
would
right, I
like,
saw that. Yeah,
therefore,
yeah.
The Question of Sport theme tune in the style of Rachmaninoff, please.
Is
Then
that theme
we've
tune still the
got,
same? Does it go da 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 boo doo 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 doo? That's the old one. Is it still the same?
I think so, yeah.
I hope so. If it's not one she recognises, it's the old Question of Sport theme that I remember. Okay.
Yeah, I think that is right. Yeah, yeah. Then we've got from Miss Brown, Ireland's call, answering Ireland's call. Topical with the Six Nations this weekend, maybe.
Rugby, yeah.
We haven't heard from Michael Jackson. Do you think you can do that in Michael Jackson style?
Wow, that's a real tricksy one because it's a kind of like sort of Titanic Irish pipes kind of vibe, isn't it? That tune.
Yeah,
Diamond,
yeah.
I'll have a go. Okay, Michael Jackson. Sorry, what style was the
Then
Question of Sport? I missed that with all my chit chat.
sort of late romantic, Ratman or someone like that. Something sort of.
Okay, Rachmaninoff. Okay, yeah, all
Um,
right.
we've got three more, Harry. Three more. We've got, you know this because we love cricket. A bit of TMS
Yep,
and a bit of Mambo number
lovely.
five. and I'm going to leave that to you. Maybe power ballad or something. I don't know. I haven't thought of a theme there. I'll leave that one to you.
Did you say
Um,
Mambo Number
then,
5?
yeah, yeah, is that right?
That's a
The
diff
old cricket
no, no,
theme.
so the cricket theme is Soul Limbo.
Oh yeah, as
Bum,
well
bum, ba-dum,
as.
ba-dum, bum.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, as well as Mambo
Okay,
Number
cool.
5, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, we could
Okay, I'll put those
just
2
throw it in
together.
maybe. I don't know. You're
Alright.
a free spirit, aren't you? Let's see what happens.
I
Oh, we
am.
got two more.
Okay, you've
2 more,
yep,
as I said. We've got,
yep.
Ian Nichols, from, who's a bit like me, unsurprisingly. Well, not him, but I surprisingly for me, both support Newcastle. I was called the
Oh, okay.
poshest Geordie, actually. Yeah, Blade and Races, if that's possible,
Yes.
in a sort of jazz swing style. And then
Blade and Races Swing.
the last one, just
Yes.
because it's a brilliant tune, "The World in Union." Maybe that's good for today, I don't know. "The World in Union," which is the Rugby World Cup theme, I think. If we can
Yep.
have that in, I'll leave that to you, Harry. Whatever you're feeling, whatever
Okay.
you're feeling.
I'll put yeah, okay, that's good, okay. Right, okay. I'm just enjoying the thought of you as the poshest Geordie, Richard. Why
Oh,
I? I say,
I
why
know.
I? Right. Okay. So just to recap on those: Glory, Glory, Man United, in a reggae style. Question of Sport in a late romantic Rachmaninoff style. Lovely. Islands Call, Michael Jackson. That's very tough. Okay. Test match special sort of mixed together with Mambo Number 5, so a kind of Latiny vibe there. The Bladen, a posh version of the Bladen Races in a swing style, and the World in Union, the rugby theme song, just to round up. Okay, here we go. Let's see what this yields. Thank you very much, Sports Department. think I got them all in.
That was incredible. Michael Jackson in the Irish with the Irish, rugby theme tune, that was incredible. Maybe they should be doing that at Croke Park on Sunday, I don't know. Absolutely
Yeah, I think
incredible. Um,
I might have just incurred the
the
wrath of about
immediate
2 million Irishmen, I think.
Absolutely. One of the things there I kind of am intrigued by, Harry, is how you how you do this, how the inspiration flows, and be really interested to know how you go about kind of practicing and sourcing material and influences for your work. How does that kind of come about? How do you do it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it? It's when you're sort of improvising in a style. I've been asked this a lot, especially by people on Radio 3 who are kind of like trying to evoke a method of like, how is there something you could learn, you can teach?
Mm,
And there's a certain sort of thing with if you're trying to learn a style. First of all, it entails a lot of listening. If you're trying to say you're asked to write something, a piano piece in the style of Chopin or something. Of course, you go and immerse yourself in Chopin. You learn all those little corners of even something sort of simple like a sort of 2-5-1 sequence. There's a certain sort of Chopinesque way of doing it, and he'll quite often do a certain type of arpeggio, and he'll have a certain chromatic run. And you know what it's like when you're driving along in the car and you're listening to a piece of music. You think, what's that? And then there's a little 4-bar phrase will suddenly come. You go, oh, of course, it's so and so. It couldn't be anyone other than Tchaikovsky. It couldn't be anyone other than Ravel. That is so them. And it's like hearing Frank Sinatra's voice. You suddenly realize, oh, it couldn't be anybody else. So it's like knowing those styles, and once you kind of understand how those styles work, then the only analogy I've ever come up with to explain how this works is if I tell you, Richard, if I give you a sort of simple piece of a sentence to read and say, read this read this sentence. I took my dog for a walk today. Read this sentence in a French accent. You just tell your brain, okay, read it in a French accent, and it comes out. Even if it's a really bad one, you're still like, oh, I was walking my dog in the park today, and I saw, you're not thinking about every sound you're making. You're not, your brain can't function in that quickly, but you're kind of telling your
yeah,
brain to do it, and somehow it works. It's kind of all those little inflections come out, and that it's like a style. It's like just like playing with an accent. And so the hard work is like kind of immersing yourself in the style, listening to all those things, recognizing them, working out what makes Debussy, what makes Mozart, and then they kind of become
yeah.
so familiar that you can just sort of turn it on like speaking in a Geordie accent or a sort of a Australian accent, mate.
Or not in
We're
my
going to give them a good harding. A bit later on in the year, we're going to give the Aussies a whooping.
So talking about inspiration then, Harry, am I right in thinking there's one or two that are particular favorites for you?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of jazz, yes. I mean, players like Art Tatum, Oscar Peterson, Bill Evans, Hank Jones, but also some of my greatest influences were the cabaret piano players like Dudley Moore, who was an amazing kind of musician, like one of the very few people, you can count them on the fingers of one hand, that could actually play proper classical and proper jazz. Andre Previn is one,
Mm,
Dudley Moore is one. And Victor Borge, the master of sort of musical comedy,
yeah.
who the first time I saw him, it's just so genius, that he can make people laugh just without saying anything, just by sort of juxtaposing two things at the same time on the piano. And I heard that's what I want. I want to make people laugh without words, playing such a ridiculous sort of mixture of things that it's so inherently silly that it makes people laugh out loud. And that's a fun thing to do.
And in terms of, you talk about jazz and people like that, the next set you've got is a particular favorite. Is that I'm right in thinking?
Yes, absolutely. I'd sort of discovered the great. I described talking about Australians. You'll like this. I discovered this composer and sort of immersed myself in as much of his music and as I could, and found out all about his life story. And I usually introduce this by saying, like, see if you can guess who this composer is. It's like he had one foot in Tin Pan Alley and the other one in Carnegie Hall. So that's to sort of say one foot in the sort of jazz sort of area of
Mm.
American music, and the other foot in the very posh classical Carnegie Hall area. And anyone guess? And I did my show in Melbourne, in a theatre in Melbourne, Australia. So I said, see if you can guess who this is. One foot in Tin Pan Alley, one in Carnegie Hall. There's silence in that, the sort of blackness of the stalls. Couldn't see anybody. And after about 5 seconds, this Aussie voice came up and says, I don't know, mate. I mean, you must have had bloody long legs. I can't see if you're laughing at that or if you're shocked at the language. I beg your pardon if anybody listening under. I apologize for my slip there, but it made me laugh. Yeah. So the great
No, that
George
is so
Gershwin is
difficult.
who I was. Is who I'm talking about. Who, like, as well as writing incredibly prolifically, like hundreds and hundreds of amazing songs from the Great American Songbook, jazz standards. Also, unheard of for a jazz composer. Wrote piano concertos, overtures, even wrote an opera. So I fell in love with Gershwin's music and his character. He was an enormous show off, and but it's also very funny as well. So very interesting character to read about, and I just love his melodies and his tunes and the way he went about putting his music together, and the way he was the first crossover person to marry those two genres. So sorry, and again, a long answer to a simple question. Apologies, Richard.
Absolutely not a problem. So who have we got in this medley that you've got for us next?
So this is all George Gershwin. This is a little medley of sort of Gershwin's greatest hits for 5 minutes. Have we got time to do a 5-minute medley? Is that we all right still for time?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Great.
absolutely.
Okay. Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
whistle stop tour of Gershwin's greatest hits. Then here we go.
I imagine that's what most people are doing wherever they are in their living rooms or their bedrooms or in their kitchens having dinner. Thank you so much, Harry. Absolutely
Yeah,
phenomenal. And
welcome.
as you say, I think it's so interesting, isn't it? The music of George Gershwin, as you say, that kind of that pioneering figure actually in that sort of
Yes,
fusion of the classical and the jazz in a way that
yes.
bizarrely didn't happen until that point. So it's yeah, a really interesting
It is.
composer.
Yeah. But Duke Ellington did it from, did it. He was writing sort of jazz music, but in quite an orchestral way, using his band. But it wasn't an orchestra, it was a
Mhm.
kind of an 18-piece swing band. But he was writing 15-minute pieces and for various, using instruments in a way that hadn't been used before, and putting Shakespeare quotes onto the trumpet. And so it was a really fantastic sort of creative time of those stuff. But Gershwin was you're right, the pioneer is the right word. That's he kind of led
Yeah.
that whole thing of like marrying those two.
And in terms of pioneers, of course, leading back to what you do and creativity, we're moving on to our final sort of set of requests. But just before we do that, I'd just be interested to know what kind of requests you've had before. Are there any particular ones that stand out as being totally maverick or totally actually impossibly difficult?
um, I don't tend to remember the ones. The thing is, you have to when you're doing these shows, you have to hope that you've got a certain amount of goodwill in the audience. The game is if you pick. If you always get some awkward so and so's that set out to trip you up, if you open yourself up to the public, you have to be able to handle that. And it's fair enough. You say any song, any style, you have to stand by it. But if somebody asks you for some incredibly obscure B side to a '60s hit that only made number 102 in the charts, and then asks you to play it in the style of Xenakis or some kind of Russian sort of like 20th century composer that didn't play it, that used harmony whatsoever, just had odd scratches and bangs and squeaky door music, we used to call it. I don't have nothing against 20th century free atonal music, but they're not really styles that are compatible, if you get my meaning. So of course, if you set out to
Yeah,
trip me up, you can. So I tend to remember the ones that go well, which is probably best for my mental health, Richard.
sure. And we've got one that might trick you up a bit in a few seconds. But which ones do you remember
Oh,
that
good.
work quite nicely? Just to give a
Um,
flavour.
I'll give you a few seconds or something. I know this is not in our sort of program and stuff, but this is really fun. I do a little routine of the requests, and I have to have it recorded for this to work. So if a request works really well and it's recorded, then I can go back to it and sort of work on it a bit. But just the thing that occurred to me when
Yeah,
the
yeah.
pressure's on to do it live, that's when the best ideas come out, because you're really on your mettle, and your adrenaline's going. And when you try and replicate that at
No
home,
one's
if you just sit at
gonna
your piano and
no one's
say,
gonna complain at all.
okay, so I got this request, and it was quite a bit of pressure. It was on a Radio 3 gig, and I had to, and that like the audience is small, but they're like highly informed. And somebody said to me once, they said, why do you worry so much about those gigs on Radio 3? It's only like one man and his dog listening. I said, yeah, but even the dog's got a degree in ethnomusicology. So there's a so you have to, anyway. But the request was to play, it was a folk song, so it was to play Molly Malone, the old Irish, done Dublin's fair city when girls are so pretty, to do it in the style of a Bach two-part invention, which is the bar, the sort of harmony and counterpoint is a really difficult thing to sort of improvise, because it's very easy to trip up on. Anyway, I'll just give you a few bars of how that worked out. It's quite fun. So that sort of thing is quite fun. Those requests that kind of start off with good ideas.
I think you should send that into Bear and Writer and see if they can sneak that into the 2-part book.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad it got your seal of approval. Yeah, it's a request that sort of it wasn't as good as that when I did it the first time, but all those ideas of doing it at the second. Yeah. That was quite an idea that came to me on the fly that I was really pleased with afterwards. That's why I worked it all out and sort of honed off the rough edges like that. So those are the ones you remember, the ones that come out really, really nicely.
Fantastic. And so segueing then into our final set of requests from some senior school pupils, it might be time for your notepad again, Harry. We've got we have got a little request in terms of Bach, if that's okay. So could we start with the Flintstones theme in Bach? And then moving to some here's our clever child trying to catch you out. Jessie J in the style of Schoenberg. Now that might not work, but I'm sure you can find a solution.
Which Jessie J song?
Have you got Price Tag?
I've heard about the money. Price Tag in the style of Schoenberg.
Yeah, not the Les Mis one.
Yeah, not Claude Michel. Yeah. But Arnold. Yeah.
Arnold. Yeah, and then then Laura, we're back to Star Wars. We quite like Star Wars at Ardingly. So Star Wars in the style of Chopin. Maybe a Chopin waltz or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
And then if we go back to LVB, that's not
LVB. Yeah.
That's not Villas-Boas, the ex-Tottenham manager, but Beethoven, of course. Fur Elisa, if that's all right, in the style of the blues. So Fur Elisa in the style of the blues. And then two more. The Pink Panther from a Duvier. Pink Panther in a bossa style.
Nice.
And
That's a good request. I like that.
I really like James Bond soundtrack. So I think if we could have Amazing Grace, Helena's requested Amazing Grace in the style of a James Bond sort of soundtrack sort of style.
So Amazing Grace is a Bond theme. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing Grace. Bond. Okay. I'm just saying now that go on, what is it?
One more, just to finish because you like it, just because you like swing jazz. Pirates of the Caribbean, swing jazz. Not Rick Astley, that was earlier. Pirates of the Caribbean, but in swing jazz.
Swing. Okay, swing jazz, Pirates of the Caribbean. Okay. I'm just going to say to the person who asked for Jessie J, that way, it is funny, but the whole idea of Schoenberg is that he wrote in what are called 12-note rows, which means once you've played one tone on the piano, you're not allowed to repeat it. And seeing as how the Jessie J tune goes, is based on 3 repetitions, that's going to be quite interesting. So it might not sound very much like Price Tag, but I'll try. It might run out very quickly. So just to recap on that, we've got the Flintstones tune, brilliant tune in the style of Bach, which is hard. Jessie J in the style of Schoenberg, which goes beyond hard to the next station on the line, which is ridiculous. We've got Star Wars as a Chopin waltz. That's fun. Fur Elise by Beethoven, the famous thing that every student learns early on, in the style of blues. The Pink Panther as a bossa nova. That's lovely. Amazing Grace as a Bond theme. That's quite funny. And Pirates of the Caribbean in a swing style. Okay, right. Thank you very much, seniors. Was it seniors, did you say?
Seniors, absolutely. Yeah.
Seniors. Always the most difficult group.
Quirky bunch we've got at Ardingly, absolutely.
Good. I love it. Thank you very much. Here we go. A little
I think it's
recap
fair
there
to
at the
say
end.
you've I think it's fair to say you've proved Louis wrong, there with the old Schoenberg and Jessie J combination. I think there's some mileage there. Absolutely.
Louis, oh, you're giving me a
Um,
name now, Louis. I'm gonna find you, Louis. I'm gonna hunt you down.
Thank you so much, Harry. That what an amazing improvisation of requests there. Now, just before we move on to the sort of final Harry hurrah, as I'm calling it this evening, we obviously know that we're in the lockdown at the moment. And like all musicians, Harry's had to find ways of doing things differently. As he mentioned earlier, he's used to traveling the world on cruise ships and things like that. Well, of course, it was lucky he wasn't on one because certain cruise ships obviously stayed in harbour for months. But of
Yeah.
course, that work has dried up for Harry, so he's had other things on his radar. So I was just interested to read, Harry, about your kind of lockdown project and what you've been doing, almost out twittering the Arding Line music department with kind of daily releases of improvisations. What have you been up to?
Well, but for two reasons. Like when your routines are all turned on their heads, you have to find some way of giving yourself a routine when you're stuck inside. So I determined
Yeah,
really early on that I was just going to play a tune a day, and record it and put it out there on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. And just for really to give me something creative to do every day and to play through a few different songs and to remind people that you're still around and still playing, and because everything had
yeah.
moved online, and it's just a nice time to send something out, and people dip in and out and they see some and others. And I'm up to nearly 250 now. Of course, I wasn't expecting that when I started, but
Yeah.
so I've got a little project in mind. I've got a friend of mine who's very clever at mixing and has taken my sort of just very averagely recorded piano and made it sound much, much nicer. And I'm going to pay, lots of people have said, can you do us a highlights package of your favorite tunes of those 250? So I'm going to do a couple of albums, 10 tunes each, and just put them for sale out there in an attempt to sort of, just generate something in terms of a work return for all of that. And it's not to put a price tag on it, not to be like Jess J or anything, of course, or even Schoenberg, but just to say that it's on a kind of pay what you can afford basis. So, if you have no money, you can buy it for 50p. And, if you're kind of somebody who's been working all through lockdown, then you can buy it for 20 quid. So, it's kind of, so I will send you a link when they're up and running and mixed, and it'll be a nice package with little sort of bits of details and photos about every song and 10 nice recordings on each album. So Lockdown Blues, it's called Lockdown Blues 1 and 2. So yes, if you could
Lockdown.
send that out, and all of you out there look out for it, I'd be hugely appreciative.
Yeah, absolutely. Lockdown blues then. I mean, as we just obviously on this event and this wonderful Friday evening entertainment that you provided, which has obviously been sort of free of charge. So sort of out to the audience there in the kind of donations corner, at the end of a concert. But this is your way to maybe donate to wider creativity. So if you're so inclined, do get in touch either with me or go onto Harry's website, and I'm sure you'll be able to purchase that wonderful creativity from probably the same place that he's actually sat at the moment. So there we are, authentic lockdown improvisations from Harry the piano to keep us going.
Amazingly, you're right, Richard.
So
How did you work that out?
how did I know? We've all been stuck where we are, aren't we?
Yes, indeed.
Look, Harry, it's been an amazing evening of musicianship, and as I said at the start of the show, we're so grateful for your time and also for all the wonderful inspiration. And I think tonight, perspiration. We see that music is a physical discipline. Those of you that are sporty. And for all your support this week in fostering that enthusiasm in music, which was evident in your workshop. So it's been a wonderful lockdown project for us. Obviously, to have this virtual evening, this virtual music at Ardingly, if you will.
Mm.
And so I'd just like to obviously thank you for all of that. My understanding is you've got one more set, you've got one more improvisatory sort of package for us
Yeah,
before we
would be nice to
obviously
wrap
go
up with
into
some. Yes, yeah. I haven't planned anything specific, so I'm going to again sort of end as I started and just so whatever comes. But I thought it might be nice to do something a little more gentle. I might throw in a few little lines of a happy birthday for Grace once again, because we started with that, so we should finish with that, and just something a little more gentle and beautiful. Because I think most of the favourite tunes of Lockdown Blues over the year that people have responded to are kind of the really pretty ballads are the ones that have really got to people, because that's sort of a, that seems to communicate well. It's all very well to kind of lovely fast showing off and all these different things. But people will just remember a rattling good tune, which is why we love Gershwin, isn't it? You know, for those kind of just
Mm,
beautiful melodies, that sort of uplifting melodies that stay with you. Ultimately, that's one of music's greatest gifts, just to kind of a melody that brings a tear to your eye or a smile to your face. I'm beginning to sound like a yeah, a bit of a Helen Steiner Rice greetings card now, aren't I? But I mean that sincerely, you know. So I'll end up with something a little prettier, I think. And it's been a brilliant week, and it's been nice, just great to see some students' faces. You know, it's kind of lovely to look into the laptop and see people, all these different people playing the piano all at the same time. I think we had a class of 70 at one point, didn't we? All in front of keyboards, which was great. And it's really,
yeah.
thank you so much for organising that and for having faith in me and inviting me back. It's been a privilege and a treat as always. And thank you to all of you tuned in tonight. I hope you've enjoyed some, haven't been too much chat. I hope you've enjoyed some of the music as well. Thanks very much to Mr. Stafford and all the department, particularly to Ben Freer, who organised all the very hard-working technical details in the background and did it absolutely brilliantly on several different
Mm.
platforms. Thanks very much, Ben, for your support and looking after us. So farewell all, cheerio. Thank you very much, Richard, and I hope to see you in the flesh, either in Ardingly or in a cricket ground somewhere with a frothing pint of beer in hand. Would be very nice, wouldn't it? We can but dream.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, for one final time this evening, ladies and gentlemen, here's Harry the piano. Hopefully, these will be a few tunes that you recognise. So, enjoy and thank you.
Thank you.